Now I have to follow that. Sounded good, didn't it? Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Kay does such a great job every week. She selects the music, they get together, whatever they do, I don't even know, because she takes care of all of it. The music selection and the practice and all of that. So thank you so much. You do such a wonderful job. The first time Kay and I met, she had answered a call that I made out saying, I need someone to work with me on the Spiritual Soul Center, and she came so excited about this project, and I said, but you know what, I can't really pay you to start, and she didn't really care about that. And she's here now, and we're able to do a little bit more for you than we did those first weeks we were together, and I'm so happy to have you here. I appreciate you so much, as does everybody else. You really know where somebody's heart is when you say, I can't pay you, and they say, I don't care, I want to be here anyway, right? That's a big indicator right there. Well, we're here, like I said, in the last week in the series based on the book by Brene Brown called Braving the Wilderness. And we're here to get the last bit of wisdom out of this, the last bit of wisdom that's calling us to go deeper into our actions and our words and our heart, and to decide if we want to live a little more radically than we have been, because these practices I've been talking about are radical things. They're not things that we see a lot of people doing all the time, although there are people out there doing it this way. Some of the things she talks about, and we've been talking about in the last weeks, are not something that we're definitely comfortable with all the time. The first week we talked about the practice that says people are hard to hate, close up, move in. And it called us to really zoom in and be shoulder to shoulder with people we disagree with, and not only just to be with them, but to find the common ground that we share, because there's common ground there. And when we live life zoomed in rather than behind our computer screen, it makes a lot of difference. It makes a lot of difference. So people are hard to hate close up. Zoom in. That was the radical way of being that we were presented in the first practice. The second practice was about deciding to suspend some of the BS, for lack of a better word, that she talked about. Suspend our own misguided or with blinders on kind of thinking that when we get so emotional we can't hear the other side. Right? We're so emotional about an issue that we decide that it has to be this way, and we even have the saying, I can't even listen to you right now. Right? Remember that? I can't even listen to you right now because I'm so focused over here and so emotional. Or I tend to talk about things that I know nothing about. And we had to say, you know what? We need to be able to identify our own BS so that we can stand in the BS that we find around us and be civil. Be civil on our good days and be love on our really excellent days. To be in the midst of all that chaos and this cross stuff that goes on in this day and age, and to stand strong there, and to be kind, and to even take it a step beyond civil, to be love in those situations. Last week, the practice that I talked about was holding hands with strangers, and how important it is for us to show up in person for collective pain and collective joy and collective frustration, to show up and be there, to remind ourselves that we're all connected, by the way, to remind ourselves that there's no separation and that we're all one. It's too hard to do that on our own, but when we show up shoulder to shoulder, like at the march yesterday, some of us were at the march yesterday, when we show up shoulder to shoulder at the concert where Michael was playing yesterday, when we show up, we create a vibration and a reminder of the oneness that we are. When you show up here, we don't know everybody in here. We're holding hands with strangers to remind ourselves of the importance of remembering our oneness, that there is no separation. That there is no separation. Brene Brown calls this place the wilderness. She calls this place the wilderness because sometimes it's hard being there. Sometimes it feels really lonely being the only one that's standing in the midst of BS and not attacking back out, but to be standing there for love. It can be lonely there. Remember Daryl Davis? Daryl Davis did that in Charlottesville, Virginia. He stood right next to the Ku Klux Klan person as a black man, and he was the one vilified by people saying, how can you even stand there? Can you imagine how lonely he felt standing right next to there? He was getting close to someone who hated him because he knew that creating that connection was the way that it would be resolved through love. But it can be lonely being there. It can be really hard. It can be really uncomfortable. I shared my story of being at a funeral for a young man who had taken his own life, who had a young family. And in the front row of that funeral, his young daughter, who wasn't even in grade school, was yelling, "Daddy, Daddy, Daddy," while his father sat in the front row right near her, sobbing, with his whole body heaving. It was uncomfortable being there, but it was essential. It was essential for us to show up so that we know and we can feel our oneness and be there for each other. You have to do that in person. You have to do that in person. That's why it feels like the wilderness, though. And it feels like the wilderness because we're there a lot of times when we're in doubt. When we doubt, can we really stand in our integrity in this place of hate? Can we really stand as love in these places? You know, it feels like the wilderness, but I got to tell you, love has it all over that. When we show up as love, love solves those issues much greater than we could even imagine. Showing up as that love, being in the wilderness and being brave enough to be there and showing up as love. And when we do that, it's really not the wilderness so much, because we have love on our side. We have love in us. It boils up in us, and it can solve and harmonize what we think is not possible. That's what is possible. So when we do that, what happens is we fall into this fourth practice that Brené Brown talks about, which is this. Strong back. You all have the card. Strong back, soft front, wild heart. That's the fourth practice that she talks about. And in order to engage in this work, this is radical work, by the way. I want to remind you, this is radical work. This takes some effort. This is radical work. And in order to do that, we've got to have a strong back. And let me tell you what strong back means. Strong back means that we need to decide that we are no longer going to live and make decisions based on what other people think of us. Let me say that again. When we have a strong back, it simply means that we are going to make decisions and we are going to live regardless of what other people think about us. Because too many of us fall in that category too often. We make decisions based on what other people think. Really, what I'm talking about here is we need to get to know our own selves. We need to know who we are, what we believe in, what's important to us, what makes us tick, instead of taking our cues from other people. We need to know what that is for us. And then we need to be courageous enough to live it. We need to know who we are, know what we believe in, and be courageous enough to live it. There is no greater example of this right now than Emma Rodriguez. She knows who she is. She says, I'm 18, I'm Cuban, I'm bisexual, and if I wasn't true to that, I could not stand here the way I am today. She knows who she is, and she is willing and courageous enough to show up. That's where we need to be. That's how we have a strong back. We know who we are. But you know what? Some of us have lost that connection about that. Either we've lived this life and we've spent so much time trying to please other people that we've lost the sense of who we are. And so we need to take some time to do that. Or maybe we're young and we don't have a sense of who we are yet. We've just been scattered, maybe, and not having had the time to focus on our own self. Maybe we were raised in a young family, whatever it is. But we need to take some time for that. Some of us use prayer and meditation to do that. Maybe journaling. Maybe you want to hire a life coach. Maybe it's getting together with a group of young parents and sharing your story so that you can actually talk out loud about really who you want to be as a parent, as a teacher, as a grandmother, as a caregiver, whatever that is. We need to take the time to do that. We need to know who we are first. If we're to have a strong back, that's what it means. To not decide to do to please others. To not make important what other people think about what we're doing. Because it really doesn't matter what other people think. Here's what Brené Brown says. She says, our work is to get into the place where we like ourselves. Do you like yourself? I mean, do you really like yourself? Do you act like you like yourself? Or does it just sound good to say, well, yeah, I like myself? Our work is to get into the place where we like ourselves and are concerned when we judge ourselves too harshly or allow others to silence us. If you allow somebody to silence yourself, do you really like yourself? The wilderness demands this level of self-love and self-respect. That's what we're really talking about here. This level of self-love and self-respect. To know what we are and to be able, and this is really, and to be able to show up as our authentic self. No excuses. Knowing that we're not perfect. But to say, this is what I am, and this is who I am in this moment, and I show up with integrity. And only when we can find that in ourselves can we show up with a soft front. Because showing up with a soft front takes some courage. And once you know who you are, and know what you believe, and are confident in that, then you can show up with a soft front, with a vulnerable heart. And not be afraid. Not be afraid of being judged. Because you know what you believe in. To show up with a soft front, our beliefs are clear in us already. So we don't have that fear. To show up with a soft front means, well, I don't have an agenda. I'm not trying to convince you of something. I'm not trying to fix you. I'm not trying to make you better. I'm simply showing up. And I'm willing to be there. When we show up with a soft front, really what we're doing is deciding to focus on the common ground that we share with each other. That regardless of what this other person thinks or has done or is different than us, that we decide that we're going to look for the similarity. We're going to look for what's the same. That's what Daryl Davis did. He was a perfect model for this. When we show up looking for the common ground. And it's really radical because you know what? The first thing most of us want to do when we find ourselves in a contentious situation is we want to fight back. We want it to be known what we feel. We want it to stand up and we want to shout it out instead of to come from love. That's what we want to do. This is what makes it radical, my friends. This is what makes it radical. What it's down to is we've got to trust from the inside. We've got to trust that there's something greater going on. We've got to let the wall drop. We've got to take a deep breath. And we've got to open our heart. That's what it's about. I want to read you a story from the Book of Joy, which is an interview between of the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu about this exact thing. About not ever deciding to close your heart. When we close our heart, we cannot be joyful. When we have the courage to live with an open heart, we are able to feel our pain and the pain of others, but we are also able to experience more joy. Here's the payoff, my friends. Open heart, more joy. The bigger and warmer our heart, the stronger our sense of aliveness and resilience. Now let me share this story. When Anthony Ray Hinton went to death row after a trial that can only be called a travesty of justice, he was understandably angry and heartbroken at how the American justice system had failed him. He says this, "When no one believes a word you say, eventually you stop saying anything. I did not say good morning. I did not say good evening. I did not say how do you do to anyone. If the guards needed some information from me, I wrote it down on a piece of paper. I was angry." But going into the 4th year, I heard a man in the cell next to mine crying. The love and compassion I had received from my mother spoke through me and asked him what was wrong. And he said he had just found out that his mother had passed away. And I told him, look at it this way. Now you have someone in heaven who's going to argue your case before God. And then I told him a joke and he laughed, and suddenly my voice and my sense of humor were back. For 26 long years after that night, I tried to focus on other people's problems, and every day I did, I would get to the end of the day and realize that I had not focused on my own. Hinton was able to bring love and compassion to a loveless place, and in doing so, he was able to hold on to his joy in one of the most joyless places on the planet. That's the paradox. Soft front, open heart, more joy, more freedom, more resilience. Soft heart, more joy. Even from a man in that story on death row who understood that to be the truth. That's radical. That's a radical way of being. It's really a paradox, isn't it? If you choose to live this way, you know, it's a brave way to live. It's a brave way to live, to decide never to close your heart. No matter what's happening, where you find yourself, to decide, I'm never going to close my heart. I'm always going to keep my heart open. That's radical, my friends. That's radical. That's not the way most of us live. Most of us throw that barrier up right away. We think that's what we have to do to protect ourselves. And what it does is close down the love that's right there inside, ready to emerge and heal and harmonize the situation in front of us. But we prevent it. We prevent it from being so. All right, it's here somewhere. Here's the paradox of an open heart. It is the ability to be tough and tender, excited and scared, brave and afraid, all in the same moment. Do you see that? Tough and tender, excited and scared, brave and afraid, all in the same moment. It's showing up in our vulnerability and our courage, being both fierce and kind. See, that's the thing. To have a heart that is fierce and kind, it's not to be a doormat. It's not to lay down and give up. It's to be fierce and kind. There is no more thing that's powerful than that in the world. Nothing. Nothing. It's someone who has a fierce heart, a wild heart, is the one who refuses to close it. No matter what. Who always sees possibility instead of obstacle. Who decides that love is always the answer to whatever the question is. And that's radical living. That's radical living. I'll close with this from Brené's book. Here's the advice she gives. Stop walking through the world looking for confirmation that you don't belong. You will always find it because you've made that your mission. Stop scouring people's faces for evidence that you are not enough. You'll always find that if you've made that your goal. The truth about who you are lives in your heart. Our call to courage is to open our wild heart and believe in the power of love that resides there. No one belongs here more than you do, my friends. No one is more important than you. No one has more love to give than you have. It's not the person sitting next to you, it's you. Nobody has what you have to give. I want you to be radical. I want you to show up as love. I want you to be who you came here to be. I want you to look for possibility. I want you to look for understanding. I want you to look for what you want to see, and surely you will find it. I want you to know that right now, that I love each and every one of you. That I love you because you showed up here and because I get to see you. Not for what you did, not for how much money you make, but I love you. You matter to me. I love you. I love you just the way you are. I think you're beautiful. I think no one could be more beautiful than you are right now. And I'm feeling that love from you because look at me. Love is tender like this. And I love you right now. I love being with you. I love all you have to give. I love your gentleness. I love that you showed up here. I love you. I love you because we're all connected. And by loving you, I'm loving myself. I want you to feel that. I love you. Every one of you. And my heart feels so, I don't know what to call it right now. I hope you feel it. I hope you realize how important it is for you to carry that same love wherever you go, with whoever you meet. Because that love, my friends, has the power to change the world. I love you. Each of you.
Love you.
I'm happy. So let's take a deep breath together. And another one, just for good measure. Let's feel the power in tenderness. It is so powerful. Strong back, soft, soft front. And the result, my friends, is a wild heart. You don't get a wild heart by thinking it's a cool thing to have. You just practice being open. You practice being vulnerable. You practice deciding over and over again to never close your heart. To decide your power lies in the love that you are. Your strength lies in the love that pours forth from you. The greatest power that there is. Call it wild heart. Call it tender heart. Call it open heart. You, me, us, love. doubt or question yourself, clear your mind and just be love. When something less than love is in contact with love, there is a healing. always be willing to instantly surrender any thoughts, feelings, or needs of being right for the wonder and beauty of being love. Love is the only true force in all creation, the light out of which all things are made, the cohesive power which holds all things together. So let's take a deep breath in and out again. To come back in our conscious awareness to this time and place. To feel the difference in our mind, in our heart, in our physical being. To feel energized by the idea that love itself, the greatest power in the universe, resides in me, resides in you. The great power that heals and harmonizes the entire universe. For this wisdom, for this experience, in this moment, we are grateful. And we simply say together, amen, together.